Mobland is the best show of 2025 for me. In some ways, it's like a small scale British gangster Game of Thrones, where there's a lot of interpersonal politicking, a lot of conflicting characters, a lot of characters with personality traits that really drive the story because they're so flawed. I'm not even sure if I would necessarily say the characters have a ton of development as much as the characters are established very quickly. You know who they are, and then you're following them as their schemes and machinations play out throughout the season. I love Guy Ritchie's dialogue. He manages to fit in some good dark humor, even with how serious the show generally is.
How long did that take?
About 3 hours.
No.
My dad was a butcher.
Fucking head disappeared and then all hell broke loose. Pissed myself, got bundled up. You?
Same. Except the piss and shit bit.
Now let me get this straight. You live in a world where you can ask Kat McAllister for favors and then tell her to go fuck herself.
You know that world you were talking about where I tell you to go and fuck yourself? That world is this world.
I'm going to try to keep this vague and spoiler free because I really think people should just go watch it on their own. But I do want to talk about the aspects of it that I like and kind of where I think that people could maybe struggle to enjoy it, even though I really enjoyed it myself. So this is one I would absolutely recommend. Definitely go watch it if you haven't seen it, as long as you're okay with a little bit of violence, kind of the whole British gangster thing. Let's just get into it. This season, while a lot happens, has a brilliant structure where every episode, Harry D'Souza, played by Tom Hardy, is a fixer for the Harrigan family. And every episode, he fixes one problem and you get kind of a cliffhanger for the next problem. And that goes through the whole season. Meanwhile, the season itself serves as a gang war for territory and who owns product, but really serves as the opening battle in a much bigger gang war that will ensue in the following seasons. So while this season does a lot, you do get later introductions to characters, and you can see the plot threads that are open for the bigger picture in the following seasons. It hasn't been officially announced yet, but it's one of the most viewed shows that Paramount Plus has, and it's gotten really good feedback from the audience as a whole, so it's hard to imagine they wouldn't renew it. I would think as soon as possible, given the age of some of the cast members and just the general good momentum the show has right now, that you would want to get it out as fast as possible. There's not very many shows that you might get more out of the rewatch than you do the initial watch, and this is absolutely one of them. On your first watch through, you end up with so many moments where a little bit more information gets revealed and recontextualizes entire relationships and plot points, and you're like, oh shit. So in the rewatch, you can catch all those little subtle things that were already there that set up those reveals, and it really makes the dynamics between the characters make a lot more sense. I love how it's done because it's not done in a way that's like, we're just not going to have two characters talk to each other so that we have the element of surprise. This is something that a show like From does, where it's more of a mystery box bullshit where they don't know what they're doing, than a show like this that's actually planned out and competent. In this show, it's much more of, it makes sense why the characters didn't want to talk about this particular aspect of their relationship until they were forced to, or it doesn't get brought up until it's actually relevant, because people don't just shout their backgrounds like they do in a more poorly made show. Tom Hardy is Harry D'Souza, the Harrigan fixer. He nails it in this role. He gets to do so much subtle acting, and it's a show that you have to pay attention to because a lot of it is communicated just from body language and expression, and you can just see the thoughts coming across his face at certain points. I thought Pierce Brosnan was great. You kind of can't tell in the first couple episodes if he's sort of the puppet figurehead of the family. And as you find out more and more about him, and he becomes more transparent with his malice, I think he was a great cast for the role. I've seen some people shitting on his Irish accent, which is weird to me considering that he is Irish. But as an American, all of you Europeans sound the fucking same to me anyway. So great casting for me. People who don't like the show have been shitting on Helen Mirren as well. I fucking hated her as Maeve, so I think she did a great job in the role. There's multiple times where she's acting one way, and then as soon as she leaves the room or changes who she's talking to, she just completely changes who she is. And she's just this manipulative, conniving bitch. I think she has a lot of really fun dialogue where she gets to say one thing to a character that seems like she's being polite or seems like the right thing to say. But as the audience, we have enough context from her that you can take a totally different meaning from it and just know that she's full of shit or means the opposite of what she's saying. I think when a character makes you hate them as much as she does, they've done their job very well. And speaking of hateable cocksuckers, Anson Boone as Eddie Harrigan, again, just does such a good job of conveying all kinds of emotions with his face. And you can just read his mind and see how much he wants revenge or he's pissed off or plotting or whatever the case may be, depending on the scene. I've heard some people comparing him to Joffrey from Game of Thrones, which I think is maybe the highest praise that you could give an actor for the type of character that he is. Paddy Considine as Kevin Harrigan has maybe the biggest arc of any character in the show, because he's the only character that I would say, as more of his background gets revealed and he's sort of faced with his past, he really changes as a person throughout the season. And I felt like his character was sort of the most passive and just trying to get by. And then as things happen for him throughout the season, he completely flips who he is. And Paddy Considine is a talented enough actor that he kind of steals the show for me in the last couple episodes, where he's fully developed into who he's going to be going forward. And his goals and ambitions become much more than simply trying to get by, as he becomes more in control of his own life and what he wants. And the way that it's handled, I think, is pretty delicate, but also really fun to watch the transformation he goes through. And obviously the setup for it really makes a lot of sense once you know the full story and you can see what has happened to him and why it took so long for him to decide to really come into his own. Even the supporting characters that don't get quite as much time, you have people like Joanne Froggatt, I'm sure I'm butchering that name even though it's British, who plays Jan D'Souza, Harry's wife. She's got some pretty good timing for jokes throughout the show. Very relatable character. For me, this is like probably what you wanted from a character like Skylar in Breaking Bad, where she's very relatable and normal, but she's not annoying. You have Toby Jones come in to maybe the most generic plot line, and obviously he makes it instantly more interesting and better. And if you have him for a side character, you're doing pretty well for yourself. The chick who plays Serafina, I believe is pronounced Mandeep Dillon, is Indian. Perfect casting. And I'm not going to get too into the weeds and the meta stuff, but a great use of diversity casting because it makes sense for the story. She's a bastard child of Conrad, very sensitive subject throughout the season, huge for the story implications and consequences. And you take one look at her, see that she's Conrad's daughter, and instantly understand the situation, really without any dialogue even being needed. And then she's a good actress on top of it, so great in the supporting role that she plays. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you have Laura Pulver, who plays Irene in the Sherlock show as Kevin's wife. You have Janet McTeer as Kat McAllister, kind of a mysterious gangster. You might recognize her as the cartel lawyer from Ozark. And I'm sure there's plenty of others in there that the Brits would recognize that I don't. And besides all the performances, the writing is just superb. Another thing that it does incredibly well is you have these characters, their personalities are established, so you know how they behave, but there's multiple options for each thing that could happen that would make sense. So you get these sort of red herrings throughout the season of like, oh, it's finally going to go this way, or things will finally be resolved. And there's always a slight pivot or someone throwing a wrench into things to keep fucking them up. And I've seen some criticism of the show that characters are doing things that are stupid. And there's a difference in having a smart character do something out of character or dumb to make the plot happen, and a character who's psychotic, acting psychotic, and there are consequences for it. And this show for me is the latter. Like when you have characters that have very clear motivations but flaws, you can really do a lot with it to keep things interesting. And the show does that all season, I think, for every character along the way. One aspect that I think people might struggle with is that I don't know if I would say there's any good people in the show. Every character does stuff that'll probably piss you off at some point or that's immoral at some point. For me, I tend to be okay with rooting for characters who are less bad than the people around them, even if they aren't good people. Like for me, I'm pretty comfortable rooting for the D'Souza family plus Kevin throughout the season. Harry, it's acknowledged in the show, is kind of psychotic. He's very calculating. He's ruthless. But when he's being ruthless toward criminals and gangsters and just generally terrible people, it's pretty easy to be like, meh, don't blame you. And we still don't know a ton about his background, actually. So maybe that could change things in the future for me, or maybe he'll start mowing down children for no reason. But for now, I'm pretty content with him as a protagonist. I'm also pretty content with Kevin because for me, he's the least bad out of everyone in the show. And it's kind of interesting because you don't know Harry's background. So you're kind of just going on what he does. But I think when you know Kevin's background, it's a lot easier to be like, well, he shouldn't live the lifestyle that he's living. But as more gets revealed about him and you find out why he's in the situation he is, you understand it. Again, wouldn't call either of them good people, but I think they're at least easy to root for. I don't want to keep this going too long. It's hard to keep going when you're trying to be vague and spoiler free, but for me, it's the best show of the year. It's easily my favorite Western piece of media in a while, especially for a TV series. So I would highly, highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, there's ways to watch it for free, or you can rent Paramount for a month and binge it and watch the Sonic movies or something along with it. But I'm going to leave it there for this one. If you've seen it, let me know what you think. I try to respond in the comments that aren't just insults, like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.